All right, this should be the last thing we need to take care of, and I know it's been a lot, and we've had quite a few videos, and some of these videos are a lot longer than I would have liked them to be, but that's just the nature of the beast. So let's get into it. First of all, at the core of this problem is that we need some kind of client-side storage that persists between user sessions. Because at the moment, we can sign in, and here I'm signed in as Serena Williams, but when I refresh the page, no, nothing's there. Well, that's another good reason. Let's make sure this is starting. Ta-da! Okay, there we go. And if we log in, we can see here that we have our post from Serena Williams. We can log in with Serena Williams. We'll say Serena Williams, password is password, and we'll log in. Cool, seems to work. And now it lets us know that, hey, we made this post, cool. If we go in there, cool, lets us edit it. However, when we refresh this, everything is gone. It no longer knows we're logged in. It's all broken. We're sad. Now, again, this highlights the need to persist this token between different user sessions. That means when the user refreshes, when they close the browser, when they get rid of the tab, it should still store that token somewhere. And actually, the only place to find that kind of storage in a browser is in the application tab in our developer tools. So if you look over here, this application tab, and you'll see it, you can click that open and you'll see a bunch of things. You'll see storage options like Web SQL, cookies, IndexedDB, session storage, and the one that we'll be using, which is local storage. And local storage is just a domain-specific key value store that we can use to persist small bits of data. And this is perfect for JWT because it's just a string, though it's not necessarily the most secure way to store user info, but that's fine since we're only really keeping the username for the time being. However, you don't really want to expose your JSON web token to any kind of JavaScript in most cases, but we can get into that in a number, when we discuss security at some other point. Again, there's a number of security concerns to be aware of when storing JWTs anywhere, but we're not going to go into them too much here. Now, let's actually just look at how to use local storage. The first thing we should do is, let's see how we can set an item in local storage, just by saying local storage dot set item, and we will put, let's say, age, and we'll say my age is 14, like that. And if I hit that, okay, nothing's there. Now, if I look at local storage, my application local storage, I'll notice that the key value has now stored my age, which is 14. And if I refresh the browser, that age is still there. And if I were to open up localhost at any point, unless we get rid of this, or if we clear our browser cache or whatever, this is going to exist there. Now, so how do we extract the value back out? Well, we can just do local storage dot get item, and we'll say age with the key that we stored it as, and we should get my age. Great. But notice something interesting here, by the way. We added the number 14 as our item, and we got back a string 14. And that's something important to know about local storage, because everything is cast to a string. If we want to store objects in local storage, you need to JSON.stringify them and JSON.parse them when we access those values. But that's less important at the moment since we're only concerned with our token, which is a string already, so it should be fine. And so this is how we're going to store this token client side. Whenever we get this token from our server, we're going to store it in local storage here, and then access it from local storage anytime we need it. Cool? Makes sense? Maybe not. You know what? Honestly, watching the code and watching the code use it is a much better way to understand local storage than just talking about it. But let's go ahead and make a few adjustments. Go into the API client class and update. Let's do a couple things. Let's say this.token name. We'll give this token a name, and we'll call it rate my setup token, just so that we have the name stored on the instance of the class. And then whenever we set this token here, let's just say, and this might not be the best way to do it, but we'll just to prove it a point, we'll set the item as this.token name, and we'll pass in the token here, and we'll store it in local storage. Whenever we set the token on this API client class, we will set the rate my setup key equal to the JWT token that's passed back from the server. And that's actually pretty simple. So now we can try authenticating and see if that token gets saved in local storage. So let's save this. No errors here. And let's try this again. Let's log in with Serena password, log in. Uh-oh. Great. Okay. Took a little while, but that's fine. And we'll check out our application, and there we go. Now, what's great about this is it means that every time we log in, we now have a location that our JSON Web Token is stored that identifies who the logged in user is. And so now all that's left is to make sure that whenever our application mounts to the screen, it checks local storage for that token, fetches the user's info from the API if a token is present, and initializes the app with that user's info. So head into the app.js file and make a few other changes. Actually, before we do that, let's add another method here to this API client class. Let's say async fetch user from token. And we'll just say return await this.request to the auth, auth/me endpoint. And the method is get. And again, this is just, let's actually put this closer to the other auth stuff. This is just saying like, hey, oops, I also can't type. Fantastic. There we go. And this is just saying, hey, let's just make a single GET request to this endpoint with the auth token in our headers and just get back the user. Let's also go ahead and add the, at least while we're here, async list posts. Since we're going to use this for everything anyway, we might as well just add some of these methods here. And we'll say the endpoint is posts, and the method is get. Cool. So then let's head into the app component. This looks good. Yep. Let's head into the app component and let's import our API client. We'll no longer need Axios. We'll say import API client from ... services API client. Cool. Looks good. And then we will modify this request right here. The first one is just the request to fetch the posts. Let's get rid of this try catch block as before. And let's make sure we set is fetching to false at the end. And then in between there, we'll just say const data error equals await API client dot list posts. It's a public endpoint, so it doesn't really matter. If data set posts data.posts. If error set error error. And again, this is like nothing crazy here, but notice how this is like 5 lines and this is not. So that's just one advantage, but there's a number of them for why we're doing it this way. Let's actually just delete all this so we can see how much cleaner this is and shorter and easier to reason about. That's the way I like it. Let's also create one more effect here that runs on mount to fetch the user if the token exists. So we'll say use effect, and then we'll run a function and make sure we'll only run, actually, yeah, let's only run that on mount. We'll just do this, and we'll say const fetch user equals async function, and it will do all of that user fetching stuff. Equals await API client dot fetch user from token. If data set user data.user. If error set error with the error. Cool. And then we will only run this function if a token exists in local storage. And so we will do that is we'll say const token equals local storage dot get item, and it will be the rate my setup token. We should probably store this as a constant somewhere in our config, but for the time being, it's fine. And we'll say if that token exists, API client set token with the token, and then fetch the user. Ta-da! Now, I think, honestly, that should be all we need. Let's try it. We'll save this. Okay, I messed up somewhere for sure. Let's check that out. API client. Okay. Method seems okay. I don't know. Let's refresh. Let's see what happens. Refresh. Okay, I definitely have a syntax error. Failed to open. All right, well, let's see what I did wrong here. That's totally fine. Must be something in the API client. Fetch user from token method. Oh, we got a space right here. Oops. My apologies. There we go. Save that. Save this. Let's go back. Ah, there we go. Okay, cool. So Serena Williams logged in. Let's refresh and see what happens. Ah, beautiful. Still logged in. And that is exactly what we want. So every time we refresh the page, we're still logged in because the app makes an API request right here to fetch the user info about the authenticated user based on whatever token is stored right here. And then it stores that in state. So every time when the application initializes, if this token exists, we'll have a user logged in. Otherwise, they won't be logged in. And that's how we determine and persist the authentication state of the user. So all that's left to do now is convert the rest of the API requests to use our new API client class. Let's go ahead and do that first in the post detail function. Now you can see here there's a bunch of them. There's like 3 different methods. So let's replace them with some API client methods instead. Hopefully I don't make that same typo as before, or any typos like that, but I probably will. So the first one, let's make sure we can create a rating for a post. That should take in the post ID and the rating. And we'll return await this.request endpoint posts post ID ratings, and the method will be post, and the data will be the rating. Cool. Then we also want to update posts. So we'll take in a post ID and the post update, and we'll make that same request to a different endpoint. Here, this endpoint will just be to post ID, and the method will be patch. And the data we pass to it will just be the post update. Do I have an extra object in there? I do. Yeah, cool. And then last but not least, async fetch post by ID with the post ID. And let's return that same thing. But this time, it will be a GET request, and we won't have any data. Great. So we'll save that. Looks good. And head back to the post detail component and update it to use them. So let's again replace Axios with the API client. // services / API client. Lovely. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to comment out this whole section here. We're going to set is fetching to false at the end. And we're going to say const data error. God, it gets tiring typing the same thing again and again and again. But it's a lot more tiring typing a lot more lines. So we're going to fetch this post by ID. And we're going to say if error, set error with the error, if data, set post, data.post, and we'll set the caption with data.caption, data.post.caption. So in case the user is the authenticated user, they'll have a caption to update in state. Cool, that looks pretty good. And then we can head into our use effects. Okay, this one seems fine. I don't think we need to change any changes there. Oh my gosh, I'm going to copy this. We do this so often. I'm just going to copy this. Great. And I'm going to comment out this big old try catch. Oops. I am not getting good at my navigation. There we go. My bad. And then I'm going to set is updating to false at the end of this. This should be true. Looks like I messed it up earlier. That's fine. Not a big deal. And let's just say const post update equals just the caption, since that's all we're updating. And then we will update the post using the post ID and the post update. And if there's an error, we'll set the error. And if the data comes back, we'll set the post as, how did we do this before? I'm just going to copy this. Great. That looks good. And anything else? I think that's fine. Let's see, do we have an update post? Yeah, this looks good. Cool. So then in handle on save rating, let's do 2 things here. Let's comment this all out. Let's make sure Oh, I definitely have some typos here. Cool. At least I'm fixing them now. That's always the important part. Let's copy this right here. And let's make sure that we call the correct endpoint or the correct method. Create rating for post with the post ID and the rating. We're saving in state. If error, set error. If data, if we are able to get a proper rating, let's go fetch that post again so it updates itself. We'll say await. Fetch. Oh, did I already do that right here? Yeah, I did. Great. When I say data dot rating, cool. That looks great. Okay, and let's save that. Okay, I have somewhere res is not defined. Ah, yes. It should just be data.post.caption. Cool. That's what you get when you copy paste. But now we can delete all this goodness. And it should be working. I'm guessing. I'm hoping. Let's make sure it works. Oh, I'm going to delete this one here too. So it's clean. Looking good. Save it. And let's head back to our application. And let's attempt first to edit this. Something nice. Let's make it something nicer. Let's save the post. Ooh, looks good, but messed something up here with the updating. So let's see what I messed up. Set post. Yes, should be dot dot dot. We should spread the entire post over the new object. So if we refresh this here, cool. Something nicer. Something even nicer than that. Save post. Ah, amazing. Okay, cool. So we can update it. Magnificent. That was good. Let's head back home. Let's open another one. This very, very sweet setup in this new workstation that doesn't have any ratings. Let's add one to it. Let's say you deserve a 10 or maybe a 9. Save this rating. Ah, magnificent. And it works. So last but not least, let's make sure now that we can also sign out the user. So let's add a sign out button to the nav bar and a sign out function to our API client, because at this point we did it. We're almost done. So in the API client, let's create one here that's async. I don't even think this needs to be async, but just to keep the same consistency, standardize all of these. We'll say this dot set token to null so that we get rid of the token here. And we'll also go into local storage and we'll set item this dot token name as an empty string so that it's no longer a valid thing when it gets pulled out of local storage. And so then in the nav bar, head into the nav bar. Ta-da! We will import the API client here. Let's import API client from //services/API client. And let's create a const handle logout function that is an asynchronous function that awaits API client.logout user. And let's actually make sure this navbar has the set user method, because let's set the user. We should actually probably set everything in the application state to null when the user logs out. So let's actually look at the app real quick. We want to reset all of this right here. So we could probably create a handle logout here and do it all there. That might even be a cleaner way to do this. So let's just say const handle logout equals async. And we'll take what we just did from navbar here. We'll take this and we'll use it in the app. Yeah, actually I like this better. And then we will pass this handle logout function to the navbar. Just like that. So then here we can set the user to, we can set posts to whatever. Set posts to an empty array. Set the user to an empty object. Set error to null so that it restarts the application state. And then all we need to do is in the navbar, we need to make sure that there is a place that calls this function, a button at least, or something like that. So let's go in here, since we're now passing this as a prop, handle logout. We can get rid of this one right here. And then let's create one more here. Let's say if the user is logged in, which means they have an email, we'll display their email, and then we'll also display a span that says on click equals, this should probably be a button, by the way. You probably want to use buttons instead of spans. Handle logout. And then just say logout. Bam. Ta-da. Oh yeah, we no longer need that. Thank you for letting me know, React. Cool. So I'm logged in. Everything looks good. I see my logout button. Ooh, I should probably have a cursor over that. But you know what? That's fine. We click it. And we're logged out. But all the posts are gone. So maybe I shouldn't have set the posts to an empty array there. Let's try this again. Let's get rid of that. Just set the user and set the error. Refresh. Cool. Login. Serena at williams.io. Password. Looks good. We can log in. Everything works nicely. Lovely. Looks good. Home. Log out. Fantastic. And there you have it. So, what a ride. That's quite a bit. We officially, at this point, have a full stack Pern stack powered application up and running from front to back with a persistent authentication system powered by Postgres and JWT tokens. And at this point, we've really covered all the essentials of full stack application development with JavaScript. That doesn't mean we've covered everything that there is to know about it, but at least all of the essentials. And so what's left is to kind of hone the way we handle application architecture so that we can manage the growing complexity in our applications more seamlessly, which we can clearly see as like these applications start to grow, it becomes a little harder to manage like, hey, what's going on with everything? And so that's what we're going to focus on in the next series is how to manage this growing complexity by using a more robust and powerful architecture on both the front end and the back end. Congrats on finishing this one though. It's a huge step forward. I know these videos were super long, but they're also super important. So congrats, and I'll see you in the next one.